the most elusive spy of them all. The other two, the Scarlet Pimpernel and the Purple Gentian, had each in their turn been unmasked by the French as Sir Percy Blakeney and Lord Richard Selwick. They had retired to their estates in England to raise precocious children and tell long stories of their days in France over their post-dinner port. But the Pink Carnation had never been caught. At least not yet. That was what I planned to do, to hunt the elusive Pink Carnation through the archives of England, to track down any sliver of long-dead gossip that might lead me to what the finest minds in the French government had failed to discover. Of course, that wasn't how I phrased it when I suggested the idea to my dissertation advisor. I made scholarly noises about filling a gap in the historiography and the deep sociological significance of spying as a means of asserting manhood, and other silly ideas couched in intellectual unintelligibility. I called it Aristocratic Espionage During the Wars with France, 1789 to 1815. Rather a dry title, but somehow I doubt Why I Love Men in Black Masks would have made it past my dissertation committee. It all seemed perfectly simple back in Cambridge. There must have been some sort of contact between the three aristocrats who had donned black masks in order to outwit the French. The world of the upper class in early 19th century England was a small one, and I couldn't imagine that men who had all spied in France wouldn't share their expertise with one another. I knew the identities of Sir Percy Blakeney and Lord Richard Selwick. In fact, there was a sizable correspondence between those two men. Surely there would be something in their papers, some slip of the pen that would lead me to the Pink Carnation. But there was nothing in the archives. Nothing. So far, I'd read 20 years' worth of Blakeney estate accounts and Selwick laundry lists. I'd even trekked out to the sprawling public record office in Kew, hauling myself and my laptop through the locker rooms and bag searches to get to the early 19th century records of the War Office. I should have remembered that they call it the Secret Service for a reason. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Not even a cryptic reference to our flowery friend in an official report. Getting panicky because I really didn't want to have to write about espionage as an allegory for manhood, I resorted to my plan of last resort. I sat on the floor of Waterstones with a copy of Debrett's Peerage open in my lap, and wrote letters to all the surviving descendants of Sir Percy Blakeney and Lord Richard Selwick. I didn't even care if they had access to the family archives. That was how desperate I was getting. I'd settle for family stories, half-remembered tales Grandpapa used to tell about that crazy ancestor who was a spy in the 1800s, anything that might give me some sort of lead as to where to look next. I sent out 20 letters. I received 3 responses. The proprietors of the Blakeney estate sent me an impersonal form letter listing the days the estate was open to the public. They helpfully included the fall 2003 schedule for Scarlet Pimpernel reenactments. I could think of few things more depressing than watching over-eager tourists prancing around in black capes, twirling quizzing glasses, and exclaiming, "Sink me!" The current owner of Selwick Hall was even more discouraging. He sent a letter typed on crested stationery designed to intimidate, informing me that Selwick Hall was still a private home, it was not open to the public in any capacity, and any papers the family intended for the public to view were in the British Library. Although Mr. Colin Selwick did not specifically say "sawed off," it was heavily implied. But all it takes is one, right? And that one, Mrs. Arabella Selwick Alderley, was currently waiting for me at— I dug the dog-eared scrap of paper out of my pocket as I scurried up the stairs in the South Kensington Tube Station— 43 Onslow Square. It was raining, of course. It generally is when one has forgotten one's umbrella. Pausing on the doorstep of 43 Onslow Square, I ran my fingers through my rain-dampened hair and took stock of my appearance. The brown suede Jimmy Choo boots that had looked so chic in the shoe store in Harvard Square were beyond repair, matted with rain and mud. My knee-length herringbone skirt had somehow twisted itself all the way around, so that the zipper stuck out stiffly in front instead of lying flat in back, and there was a sizable brownish blotch on the hem of my thick beige sweater, the battle stain of an unfortunate collision with someone's cup of coffee at the British Library cafeteria that afternoon. So much for impressing Mrs. Selwick Alderley with my sophistication and charm. Tugging my skirt right way round, I rang the buzzer. A crackly voice quavered, "Hello?" I leaned on the reply button. "It's Eloise," I shouted into the metal grating. I hate talking into intercoms. I'm never sure if I'm pressing the right button or speaking into the right receiver or about to be beamed up by aliens. "Eloise Kelly. About the Purple Gentian?" I managed to catch the door just before it stopped buzzing. "Up here," called the disembodied voice. Tipping my head back, I gazed up the stairwell. I couldn't see anyone, but I knew just what Mrs. Selwick Alderley would look like. She would have a wrinkled face under a frizz of snowy white hair, dress in ancient tweeds, and be bent over a cane as gnarled as her skin. Following the directive from on high, I began up the stairs, rehearsing the little speech I had prepared in my head the night before. I would say something gracious about how lovely it was of her to take the time to see me. I would smile modestly and express how much I hoped I could help in my own small way to rescue her esteemed ancestor from historical oblivion. And I would remember to speak loudly, in deference to elderly ears. "Poor girl, you look utterly knackered." An elegant woman in a navy blue suit made of nubby wool, with a vivid crimson and gold scarf tied at her neck, smiled sympathetically at me. Her snowy hair, that part of my image at least had been correct, was coiled about her head in an elaborate confection of braids that should have been old-fashioned, but on her looked queenly. Perhaps her straight spine and air of authority made her appear taller than she was, but she made me 5 feet 9 inches, if one counts the 3-inch heels that are essential to daily life, feel short. This was not a woman with an osteoporosis problem. My polished speech dripped away like the drops of water trickling from the hem of my raincoat. Hello," I stammered. "Hideous weather today, isn't it?" Mrs. Selwick Alderley ushered me through a cream-colored foyer, indicating that I should drop my sodden raincoat on a chair in the hall. "How good of you to come all the way from the British Library, was it, to see me on such an inhospitable day?" I followed her into a cheerful living room, my ruined boots making squelching noises that boded ill to the faded Persian rug. A chintz sofa and 2 chairs were drawn up around the fire that crackled comfortably away beneath a marble mantelpiece. On the coffee table, an eclectic assortment of books had been pushed aside to make room for a heavily laden tea-tray. Mrs. Selwick Alderley glanced at the tea-tray and made a little noise of annoyance. "I've forgotten the biscuits. I won't be a minute. Do make yourself comfortable." Comfortable? I didn't think there was much chance of that. Despite Mrs. Selwick Alderley's charm, I felt like an awkward 5th grader waiting for the headmistress to return. Hands clasped behind my back, I wandered over to the mantel. It boasted an assortment of family photos, jumbled together in no particular order. At the far right towered a large sepia portrait photo of a debutante with her hair in the short waves of the late 1930s, a single strand of pearls about her neck, gazing soulfully upwards. The other photos were more modern and less formal, a crowd of family photos taken in black tie, in jeans, indoors and out, people making faces at the camera or each other. They were clearly a large clan, and a close-knit one. One picture in particular drew my attention. It sat towards the middle of the mantel, half hidden behind a picture of 2 little girls decked out as flower girls. Unlike the others, it only featured a single subject, unless you counted his horse. One arm casually rested on his horse's flank. His dark blonde hair had been tousled by the wind and a hard ride. There was something about the quirk of the lips and the clean beauty of the cheekbones that reminded me of Mrs. Selwick Alderley. But where her good looks were a thing of elegance, like a finely carved piece of ivory, this man was as vibrantly alive as the sun on his hair or the horse beneath his arm. He smiled out of the photo with such complicit good humor, as if he and the viewer shared some sort of delightful joke, that it was impossible not to smile back. Which was exactly what I was doing when my hostess returned with a plate filled with chocolate-covered biscuits. I started guiltily, as though I had been caught out in some embarrassing intimacy. Mrs. Selwick Alderley placed the biscuits next to the tea-tray.